You're listening to the Archaeology Podcast Network.
Welcome to episode 43 of Ethnocynology. I'm here with Alexandra the Average, and I just realized when you told that to me before this, that's a play on Alexander the Great. I don't know why.
Yep, and you are one of the first people to ever actually acknowledge that before I say it.
Well, I know a lot about him, but other than that, and been reading about the Odyssey, so Greek stuff's on the mind. But yeah, how you doing?
I'm great. How about yourself?
I'm okay. Yeah, nice, easy Tuesday morning.
There we go. Yes, most people do not realize that my name is a play off of Alexander the Great. And there was a point for a while people thought it was just the way that I viewed myself. I was like, no, it's supposed to be humorous, which also a lot of my humor is self-deprecating, but still.
Yeah, no, that's totally fair. And then, yeah, we were chatting a little bit ago about something, and we were going to dive into this.
Yeah. So I live in California. I'm from the Bay Area. I was born and raised in the East Bay. I live in Oakland now. And it's so funny because I think when people think of Oakland, California, they don't think of someone who looks like me. They think of, or someone who has like the way that I speak, my background, which is actually really, in my mind, ridiculous because I would say that I am a byproduct of my community and my upbringing. So I live in a very educated area. And I would just say that is more a testament about the San Francisco Bay Area than anything. Yeah. So I live in Oakland. I live right outside of San Francisco, and I live essentially right by a bunch of national parks because I'm very spoiled. And I lived in San Diego for a little bit, and I also lived in Arizona for a little bit. And I realized I really don't like the desert. And I came back pretty quickly.
It's very dry and very hot.
Very dry, very hot, very isolated.
Yeah, I guess so in a lot of ways. We're in Arizona.
Yeah. I was in Tempe.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah.
Because I went to
not the bigger.
Nope. I went to, no, I lived there, and then I lived in this little town called Goodyear for a hot second, or I stayed in this town of Goodyear for a hot second. And let me tell you, I love the Bay Area. I know that a lot of times people are like, oh, San Francisco, but it's one of my favorite. It's my favorite place to be. Like I spent a good part of my career. I spent a little bit of my career going back and forth between San Francisco and New York in Manhattan. And I actually ended up loving the Bay more.
Nice. Yeah, I've been to the Bay many times, been to Oakland once, been to Orange County many times, LA, a bunch, all over California. I did the PCH. That was really fun.
Yeah. I would say that's one of the most beautiful drives. I think my boyfriend and I have both agreed that the drive up the one is one of the most beautiful drives you could do. So going all the way up to Canada. So we love also doing the Sea to Sky Highway, which I would say that's on par with Big Sur.
Okay. I went down. I didn't go up the highway. I should try that next time.
Yeah. If you go up, it's a very long drive. I would even recommend just flying into Vancouver and going up because you can end up in Squamish, which is stunning. And if you are into bouldering, rock climbing, mountain biking, or hiking, it's a great place. I'm into two of those. None of them do I feel confident enough actually risking my life and climbing up a rock in person, but I do really love it. It is, you could just get mountains on one side, ocean on another, and it's just one of the most stunning places in the world. I'm convinced.
Yeah. In fact, that reminds me, I think I found your account because you had posted about the Salish wolf dogs or the wool dogs. Yeah. And I'd commented something. Yeah. And I guess your brand is the data-driven dog mom, right? Is that what it's called?
Yep.
Can you tell me more about that?
So the Data-Driven Dog Mom came to be because one of the first videos I ever did that really blew up, which actually led to my branding, was a video that I did on the racification, which was a review of a meta-analysis on the racification of pit bulls, which is, I will link it to you. It is a phenomenal paper. And as you know, if you find a journal that is interesting to you, you have an opportunity with the same journal, especially if it's open access, where you can just say, oh, I want to read this reference. I want to read this reference. I want to read this. And this led to several weeks of me reading into why do people feel the way they do about pit bulls? And not only that, I have one. She's a German Shepherd Husky Pit Bull mix, and she's currently at the vet trying to figure out if she has hip dysplasia, which I'm not going to think about. I have so much anxiety. And I just did this deep dive on it where I realized this is a very common thing online that people believe, where there's an extreme parallel between the way we talk about certain dogs and the way that we talk about certain demographics. And I remember telling my cousin's wife that theory, and she said, and she's Latina, and she's Black and Mexican. And she was like, oh, yeah, Obviously. So I, at that time, had maybe 1,000 followers that were like all from my own community.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm just going to do like my own version of a video essay in 3 minutes on this. I got 100,000 views overnight.
Nice.
Which was, for me, to be quite honest, terrifying. And it led to me being introduced to so many people who were doing amazing work. And I've been lucky enough where people have actually reached out to me to help them either digest information, or I've had advocacy groups reach out to me to gather research for them to try to make policy change, which has actually been one of the more rewarding things in my career, is actually seeing that come to, seeing the work that I do or the things that I've researched have some form of impact. And that's how it's like, I've just been collecting data. So I labeled myself as a data-driven dog mom, because if any of you watch any of my videos, they are reference heavy.
Okay.
And
yeah, and I noticed on your website too, like you mentioned like how many cited sources and stuff you have too, which is interesting. I haven't seen someone do that before.
You've gone to my website?
I was gonna say your website's very good.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. I work with, in my 9 to 5, I work with a bunch of really intelligent engineers, and the bar is set extremely high. So I thank you.
Nice. Yeah. I'm trying to like make mine more streamlined. So when I have a guest on, I'm like, what's their website? And I look, it's like, yeah, hers is good.
Well, it's for me, I just gathered a lot of this information and I'm like, okay, how do I make this something useful? And so part of it are my videos and the part of it is my website. And I will say building a website is actually way easier than making a 3-minute video.
Okay. We're not sponsored by Squarespace here, but I do use Squarespace.
Oh.
Do you use your own? Or do you just make it yourself? Or
I make it myself and I publish it through Zencaster. Not Zencaster. I forgot what it's called. It starts with a V, but yeah.
One of them. Awesome.
One of them.
Okay. So another thing I was going to ask, did you go to, I'm assuming college, but did you go to grad school or anything?
I didn't. It's actually still on my radar, but I really love not being a student loan debt.
Yeah. No, it's an excellent thing right now. Not to be.
Yeah. But surprisingly, the thing that I have been contemplating going to grad school for was actually bioinformatics, getting an MPH in bioinformatics, because I do a lot of public health stuff. Visualization of data of like,
oh, okay.
Yeah. So that was my top thing, and I really wanted to go more in the public health space because a lot of what I do is talk about access. Sure. I don't really have a desire to have a bunch of initials behind my name though.
Right.
Like the ego part of it is not very interesting to me. But would I love to get a PhD for funsies? Absolutely, if I had the time. But also all my friends who have PhDs went through a very bad mental health period.
Yeah. Yeah. Same in archaeology. It's tough.
You guys do such interesting work though. Your guys is like very exciting. Like I feel like you guys are accessing information or doing things that is actually extremely interesting and exciting to people.
Yeah. It's very exciting, very interesting. It's just the same thing. You're stuck in the benefit is you're in a cohort of people who all want to study this as their like very niche life's work focus. But at the same time, then you are also competing for funding, competing for jobs, and the mental health toll is just nuts. And then you get, shipped off to Boise State or something like that when you plan to teach at, Harvard or maybe Orlando or somewhere where your family lives. That seems to be the problem. But other than that, yes, people do love it. And it's a good thing to do for the most part. But yeah, same here. I don't really want to be a professor, have all that bureaucracy. I just doctor in front of my name would be cool, but I don't need it. I'm doing what I want to do now. But I bring that up because like in grad school, something you learn is how to research, how to do data science and how to read, be scientifically literate. And I'm very impressed with the way you go about that. So thank you.
Well, I have spent majority of my career, even when I was in college, I spent majority of my career working directly with scientists because my entire career was in biotech and pharmaceutical research. And as you know, scientists tend to be really critical. So if you bring something half-assed, it's going to be called out as half-assed, which forced me to be, I would say, more scientifically literate, or being able to read these journals and understand them better than the average person who did just go through high school. But I would say that I don't have the credentials to actually say this with like full certainty without actually naming my references. Like, I think that vets can absolutely make videos to be like, well, this is a thing and this will cause this. And they have a lot more authority in the space because of the doctor label that they have behind them. And for me, I have to really identify not only the resources that I'm referencing, but also sometimes call out when the resources are imperfect. Yeah. And There's this video that I stitched once, which I was stitching someone who did a video who said that dogs should only eat once a day. And if you don't believe me, in his exact words were, dogs should only eat once a day. If you don't believe me, read the research. And this was a paper that came out of the Dog Aging Project. And I said, okay, I'll read the research. And then I read it. And even the authors explicitly said, like, this is a starting point, and this is, our sample size is so small, it's not a reliable piece of information. So something that I have found with actually reading these papers, that you have to read more than just the abstract. Mm-hmm. And so even reading the discussion and the critical feedback they receive to make it a peer-reviewed journal is the more important part. So my background of working with scientists, which I like to refer to as warming my hands on their fire, because I am not in the lab, nor do I want to be. There was a period of my life, and I would never do it again. But learning how to do it was a skill set that was just developed. And I've also been lucky enough for people who have actually reached out to me, like, how do I get started with this? And I just tell them, it's like, read the whole thing. And then every time your curiosity leads you somewhere, just follow it.
Yeah. No, that's great advice. Something we learned in school was like, you read the abstract, obviously, then look at the figures, see if that's good, read the discussion, and then you can go into the intro and like read the full thing, but just had to glance through it at a cursory look. And then you can, judge by there what you want to look at. Something I wanted to ask though, I mean, I have TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, all this stuff. So anytime if I get slightly into meal prepping or I get slightly into, like exercise or something, I'll get a thing that's like, why carbs are bad. And then it's like, why fats are bad, why you need more carbs than fat. And like, it's just overwhelming. And you're like, okay, I guess I'll just eat cardboard. But then I'll go through. So with dogs, though, I've noticed the same thing. People are like, you have to eat a raw diet. You can't eat a raw diet. Kibble is actually great for you. And then you're like, are you sponsored by? I'm going on a tangent here, but how do you weed through that stuff? Where do you begin? And like, how do you pick what is a good study,
How do I pick?
Yeah.
But that's a great question. So right now I tend to start with what is newest. So I will actually, like, I have Google alerts to find new research that pops up, and I could be like, okay, what is this? And I'll have to read the thing in its entirety. When it comes to things like deciding what is good, you can never just rely on a singular source. As in, I have told my boyfriends, like, I refuse to engage with someone who doesn't know what a secondary source is. Because it's a good rule, but it's also like, that also sounds slightly elitist, and also probably might close me off to some people and how they want to communicate. Because I have found that one thing that is missing in the higher education academic world is active listening a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah.
As you know. And
had to learn it.
But if only, like, there's this meme, and I'll send it to you, that's phenomenal, that says all these dots are red. It's like, okay, well, this one dot is blue. This one individual, you never want to go with the one individual blue dot. You want to find the consensus. Right. And how do I find it if it's a good source? I never rely on one. Like, if I find a new source, like, I like to talk about new research online, I refuse to leave it as just the one study or the one new piece, or the new piece of the new rule. This is one, but I need at least 2 or 3 more to discuss it in its entirety to be fair to what is the conversation. Because, like, if you were to ask my friends, what is the best Asian food? If you ask one of us, that's not going to be the consensus of what's going to be for all of us. So like, I'm going to say Korean food, and the rest of my friends say Chinese food. The general consensus in our group is Chinese food is a favorable one. But if you are only focusing on the blue dot or me saying Korean food, you're getting a very incomplete picture.
Yeah.
I don't know how to define what is a good study, because I don't think that you can have one good study. I think you need to have several.
Great answer. That's just how it should be. Like, there needs to be nuance, and then you have to, exactly. And if there's, especially in archaeology, it's like one study will come out and it gets all over the news. And it's like the direwolf thing, for example. It's like, oh, they cloned direwolves. They didn't. So then you got to look, but that's all over the news because they have the money to pump that study out. And then you look at all the rebuttals and no one knows how to look that up and stuff. So it becomes, murky. I guess, though, I could start with, like, what's like the most interesting thing you've learned through your research, like, regarding dogs? I know that's a tough one. Or what's something, if you're at a party and someone's like, what do you do? Like, what do you spit at them?
I get yelled at on the internet by people who really love certain type of dog breeds and raw food. I think the most interesting thing for me that I've talked about online that people are always floored to hear is kibble's great for your dog. as of right now is the best diet we have for your dog. But I don't really talk about nutritional science that much. I would say the most interesting, actually I lied. The most interesting thing that I have found, which people often are shocked to hear, is that the relationship you have with your dog is not cultural. It is a very universal thing. It doesn't matter where you are. There was a study that actually came out this year that was really interesting, and I'll send it to you so you can link in the show notes. But they studied working dogs in 8 different countries all over the world on all different continents. And they actually found that they actually went into this study thinking their main hypothesis was like it was going to be different. Their relationship with their dog was going to be different based off of the cultural and their upbringing. But it was actually very the same. There was very little variety. Now, that's a very small sample size, but a lot of the research that I have found about the relationship with dogs is that it's one of the most human things that we have. It's the one of the most human unifiers.
Yeah.
It's these relationship with these animals.
When you say like it's more universal than cultural, like it's the biology of it, it's the like how people interact. So somebody in to the Philippines versus, Arkansas, it's the same relationship in what way?
Just the relationship of how we view them, how like if they are your dog. So my mother's from the Philippines. And so I've spent a lot of time there. And it's funny because there are a lot of stray dogs. But when you have a dog in your life, the love, the companionship, the way that you interact with them, the way you care for them, the emotional intensity and attachment that you have to them is pretty universal.
Yeah.
There are obviously outliers to that, but I would say when it talks about the most interesting study, that's probably the one that I would say is probably the more interesting thing that I've learned, because there are people who do genuinely believe that your relationship to your dog is cultural, which has also led to a lot of issues within the community itself.
Can you elaborate on that?
Oh, just racism.
Oh, I thought so. I just wanted to make sure.
No, it's a great question. Talking about racism on the internet is super easy. I don't know if you know that, but there's a lot of socioeconomic inequality when it comes to dogs, and a lot of that. And when you pull intersectionality into that, you have actually found that people feel, and people who do have underlying racist views feel extremely justified in that because of this mentality that it is different with each culture. Like I've had people in my comment section often be pretty racist towards me or to people of color, saying that people of color love their dogs less or something around those lines. And that's also very historical, where it's like the eating dogs and cats was a rumor that was started specifically about Chinese immigrants. And that was in the United States, specifically in California.
Really?
Which is, oh yeah. It was such a and it was a lot of that does stem from just verbal talking within each other. And you have found, and there's some papers on it. I would really recommend the book Strangers in a Land about Chinese immigration in the United States, specifically in California. It's very upsetting because it's so deep in the Bay Area, where it's like they talk about towns that like they talked about Hollister and Gilroy, which happens to in California, which is where my partner is from. And the amount of like racism that happened there in San Francisco and Oakland itself, it's the narrative of they're eating certain animals was really used to other demographics that they didn't want to see around. And you saw it again, and you'll see it frequently. So people will feel justified saying like, well, their relationship to pets or animals is very different to our relationship with animals. And that is used to perpetuate negative racist stereotypes, pretty bigoted, and also to justify why certain people can't adopt animals.
Yeah.
Isn't that fun?
It's very fun. It made me think about, we worked on a site, or I didn't work at it, but we could go tour it here in Wyoming, where, the Chinese helped build a railroad out here. But other than that, they also opened laundromats, they opened restaurants and things like that. And there was like I forget what it's called. I don't want to misquote it. I'll put it in the notes, but some kind of massacre, and they burned like this Chinese like town down, and like there were archaeologists going to excavate it and, pulling stuff out of the house and stuff like that. And it's not that we forget about that. It's just Chinese immigrants that was like something in the 1800s with the Chinese Exclusion Act. You don't really think about now because Chinese immigrants come all the time. But complicated history in the US for Asian Americans. Yeah.
One of the biggest massacres in California was specifically towards Chinese Americans in Los Angeles.
What was that?
So it was a Los Angeles Chinese massacre of 1871.
Okay, around the same time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry.
Highly recommend that. No, it's okay. No, highly recommend the book Strangers of Land if that's something you're interested in, because it is, I would say that's one of the best books on immigration history, Asian American history that we have right now. But also you get to see how you can actually see how a lot of the things that happened back then very much still affect things now. And actually part of that is also animal welfare. Also, animal welfare is a very, and I'm not trying to call out a whole demographic, but it's very white American.
Yeah. No, I'll let you continue.
I think right now it's 96 to 98% white of the profession of veterinary medicine.
Okay. And animal welfare being medicine or like adoptions as well, or shelters?
Yeah, adoptions as well. Mm-hmm.
And that's predominantly white led.
Well, at least veterinary medicine, we don't really have good, I have not looked into it. I will, and then I'll email you. But yeah, a lot of animal welfare is actually predominantly white. And that's not particularly inherently evil on its own. But when you take that into account with discrimination that people of color experience when it comes to animal welfare, you see that play out in discrimination in real time.
So like a black family going to, they might be less likely to go to a white vet to seek care, or like the white vet might be more discriminating towards them?
They might not feel there might be an implicit underlying bias of how a vet treats them. I would say that that experience is not just exclusive to race. Like I recently did for my podcast, the first episode we ever recorded was actually about fat phobia in the vet space, which is also a very fun topic to talk about online. And you actually found that people did feel very discriminated against in this space. That being said, I also very much love vets, and I just think that vets are just humans.
Right.
And I think that people in animal welfare who adopt out are humans. I also think the way that we talk about certain dogs does have like an underlying tone to it. Like the way we talk about golden doodles is very different than how we talk about Rottweilers.
Right. Just to clarify, it's fat phobia against the owner or like a fat dog? Or an obese dog, I should say.
This is one of my favorite studies to reference, because it's a very strong correlation. Because you can see it when you see the graphs. Yeah, it's like when you see the graphs, you're like, oh, that's not good. Okay, so so they did a study on veterinary professionals, and they took photos of a dog, and they took photos of an overweight, and then they digitally altered them, and they put them on a graph to say like, okay, you have a fat dog, thin owner, you have a thin dog, thin owner, overweight dog, overweight owner and a thin dog, and vice versa. And they have found that when the owner is thinner, they are considered more likely to take advice from a veterinary professional by the vets. And what they brought their dog in for was they were more likely to have genetic testing done, or testing for an underlying cause, versus owners who are overweight who just automatically shifted blame. This is not to say that this is all vets. This was just a very strong study. This was also not happening in real life. So this is all self-reported, and these are all self-reported by vets themselves. Again, imperfect data, but that was a very hard conversation to have with them. But they also went in and be like, yeah, I can absolutely see it. And I want to be hyper aware of doing that. But also there are health benefits for an animal to be thinner. It's like they live longer.
Right.
So everyone in this space, as a professional, you're just a human, and you are bringing in your own human biases, which we all have, because we're all part of a culture. We're all part of, like in the US, we're all part of in American culture, which is, America's a little too big to say one American culture, because you and I in completely different areas, we're going to be vastly different based on our own upbringings. But you are going to bring in your own version, your own little biases as you go into each space. So identity does play a big role in this.
My aunt's a vet, and her practice is in like a very heavily Puerto Rican and Hispanic area in Long Island. I never really thought to ask her questions like this. That's a good thing. I might ask her. But that to say too, I didn't think about it, but I assume with like obese people that I've heard, like it runs in my family, they've gone to the doctor and they're just like, well, the doctor's just telling me I'm fat. And it's like, well, I could see a doctor or a vet then being like, well, your dog just needs to lose weight. Like we don't need to do any testing, and that might be a little more I didn't think about that being, a thing. You can discriminate against obese dogs as well.
Yeah, you were heavily more likely to be discriminated against as an overweight owner than a thin owner, regardless of your dog's body composition.
Yeah.
And you never think about that in the moment. But that being said, majority of vets are doing everything they can to not carry those biases in. And vets themselves also experience their own discrimination their own way. Like there's a vet that I am mutuals with, Adam Cook. He does these videos of who's that Pokemon, but it's a dog.
Okay.
And he told me once, and I hope it's okay that I'm sharing this story, I'll check with him, that his last name is Cook, but he's half Japanese. So when he goes into a room and people see that he's Asian, he says that he has seen people get a little bit disappointed.
I see.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I thought that was going in like a joking way.
No.
Okay.
I can make a joke about it, but I don't want to.
Yeah, sure. I'll leave that for you. Yeah. Okay. I didn't think about that. And I worked at a vet program with the Army Corps of Engineers, and part of the job was an archaeological lab thing, but a lot of our employees were like African American or Black. And like, that was something I learned as a white dude, like going into it. Like this one guy was very excited to get a job and have an interview, and he went and got it. And like, no one answered the door and no one was there when he was supposed to have his interview. And to me, I was like, oh, maybe they just, you got the time wrong. And then the other Black employee was like, no, they noticed he was Black. And I just like little things like that I just never thought about on that side of the things that, yeah, it is eye-opening. And that's why I know a lot of stuff on the internet right now, especially, is very like super racially driven, or it's like very racistly driven. And they're very, what's the word? It's a dichotomy, but there is like, I'm very much more interested in that, like how that manifests than just like, there's no racism, I'd rather know. So little things like that. So yeah, I guess, is there anything more with dogs or something like that?
With dogs specifically? Yeah. So you will actually find, the program for pet health, equality, and care. Yeah. So it's called CARE, and I will send you their information, but they actually found that people of color adopters are denied at significantly higher rates than white owners. And the denials skew towards like land ownership, no offense, or your rent, or your landlord does it, or like we need to get landlord approval. And all of those where you are more likely to face those exact responses as a family that happens to be people of color in comparison to being a white family. I also want to acknowledge that I'm half Asian, half white. I'm the most white passing Asian for the most part of all time. No one wants to hear that stuff from me. I think that having me looking like myself and talking about this sometimes is really disheartening, because I think people take me more seriously because I look the way that I do, in the same way that I think that people want to hear what I have to say about veterinary medicine and research more than actual vets. And I don't think that, and I think that actually says a lot about the way that we view experts right now and the way that we want to talk about these things. It's like we want to hear it from someone who looks and has a background of you.
Yeah.
And that's actually very disappointing. I think Zendaya, the actress Zendaya, actually says like, I am Hollywood's acceptable version of a Black girl. And I do think there's something to be said about being a norm that makes people comfortable enough to like be looking a certain way or not having a certain background makes people more likely to listen to me. And I actually find that disappointing. I find that disappointing that people will be like, well, I want to hear what you have to say about race. I don't want to hear what people of color have to say about race. Or I want to hear what you say about veterinary medicine as a non-vet professional who's getting pharmaceutical kickbacks, which they don't. I don't want to hear what an actual vet has to experience, what their experiences are and what the data is coming from them. It's a very weird place to be right now on social media.
Yeah, that's very true. And I get a lot of this with archaeology too. It's like, you should talk more about this, or like Iron Age Africa. You only talk about Europe or Asia and stuff like that. And it's like, well, one, I'm not super well versed in it, and then I always feel uncomfortable. Like that should come from a Black archaeologist. It's not for me to like just spout facts about. But at the same time, other people will be like, well, it's more important that you do it because people are listening to you. And I'm like, yeah, that is also true. So it's an odd spot to be in. You being Filipina, has that kind of played? I mean, obviously, besides the racist comments, or that could be part of it, but does that factor into the your background being into dogs, or what this data-driven stuff? It's in your bio.
Yeah, it is. So my mother and my grandmother are both allergic to dogs. My mom claims that she was. I'm pretty sure she was just scared of them until she started experience life with dogs. That didn't have a huge impact on me with my relationship with dogs. I will say, I think the jokes have definitely had an impact on me in my relationship with dogs, as in like when people make these jokes like, well, you know them, you've seen them online. And I'll just be like, well, now I'm going to love my companion animals harder. But being an Asian individual has not affected my relationship with dogs. And if anything, I feel like I make this joke that a lot of my friends who immigrated here from Asia, whose parents have kids and have dogs, they love the dogs more. Like their dogs are more their children. I would say that my relationship going into the Philippines and seeing the amount of stray dogs makes me really sad, but they're also doing okay. Like you'll just have like my family in the Philippines be like, we have leftover rice, and then we just leave them out for the dogs. I've seen my grandfather be like, I had too many onions and I just threw them out. I'm like, oh, please don't do that. But it made me, the relationship with dogs was also it's also very class oriented. So there's obviously in the Philippines, there's pretty large wealth inequality. So people who live in lower income individuals will have they will have companion pets, but a lot of them will have like stray pets around them that they'll just take care of. And then people who are higher income will have a lot of pets who probably shouldn't be in the Philippines, like a husky, and they'll be designer pets, and then they'll have their help take care of them. So I've seen that play out. So I got to see, I think that was one of the biggest cultural shocks for me with pets, was seeing something for the first time, like, oh, that's a very interesting observation. And then I came back to the States to be like, oh no, it's kind of, in some ways it's kind of the same. Also, I will say that the Philippines is very American.
Okay. Never been.
You should go. They love America.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a thing.
I guess they like us more than Spain, or
well, the bar's set low there, but to be fair, well, the Philippines, even the government is actually shaped after the United States government. Like they have 3 branches, they have terms in office. It's very American.
Was that? I'm getting into history now. Is that Jose Rizal? Is that the guy's name that did all those reforms? Okay, never mind. That's for a different pod.
Also, one of the biggest, I think America's first concentration camp that wasn't about Native Americans was actually of Filipinos during the Philippine-American War.
Oh, another great fact.
Isn't that?
Yeah, that's fun. Okay, well, unless there's anything more you want to say on that.
No, I think I've talked a lot about race, and I think I've talked a lot about race, but I also want to acknowledge that you should be listening to your friends of color about this, or people in your life. I am not the appropriate person to be talking about this, even though I do mention it. I do think supporting organizations that do talk about this. So the one that I mentioned earlier, Care for Animals, which I'll link, they do a phenomenal job. And I believe they also have a documentary coming out soon.
Sure. Mm-hmm. Okay. I wanted to ask about pit bulls, but I guess that also dives into race a lot.
Ask me about pit bulls.
Yeah. So this is one I get asked a lot on. Well, here's another thing I'll preface with, and people that have listened to my show know this, but I'll always state like, hey, I'm an archaeologist. My focus is on dead dogs and like mythology and all that stuff. And then like, why is my dog spinning the circle 3 times? And I'm like, that's not my wheelhouse. But I do get asked quite a bit, like my stance on pit bulls and like aggression and dogs and stuff like that. And 2 of the dogs that have been bit by have been pit bulls. 2 of them, another were German Shepherds, but that's just like his name was Elvis. He was some kind of terrier mutt thing, but he was just not trained. I've never in my life been like, oh, pit bulls are like, it's just 2 of the dogs that have been bit by, and it was me being a kid getting up in their face and stuff like that. But I've also met pit bulls that are the most loving and great dogs that I've met. And especially if they're mixed with labs, like they love forever and they live forever. My anecdotal knowledge of this is that pit bulls were the American like dog for a while. Yeah. And then it kind of shifted to labs and now Frenchies. And then now, because there's so many pit bulls, it's easier to be adopted by people with less money, lower income families, which is why they're associated with Black families. Is that correct?
Not only that, it's people are not breeding them and selling them for like $5,000. So dogs are a big status symbol in the United States and
world history as well. Yeah.
Yeah, they are. I mean, I just did a video not too long ago about Ludi, who is the dog that was given to Queen Victoria after they looted a palace in China.
Her name was Ludi?
Her name was Ludi. That dog's name was Ludi, which is...
I'm writing that down. That's crazy.
Right? Like, you don't... Like, it's so funny how dogs are not immune to our history and our biases.
That's wild. Her name is Ludi?
Yeah. You can actually go like in the palace, in Buckingham Palace, I'm pretty sure still, you can actually see a bunch of portraits done of Ludi.
That's wild. All right. I'm going to let you continue. But
yeah. So, yeah, they are a status. So in the 1980s, there was actually a piece in Time magazine and also a piece that was done by, I think, Sports Illustrated that actually talked about these dogs being more aggressive, and they were like thug dogs. And the vernacular that they used and the descriptors that they used was actually very similar to the way that we talk about Black men today. And so pit bulls became a status symbol of aggression, but they were the family dog. And I also think that a lot of times I will get people be like, well, they were bred for this. They were bred to do these things. And right now, the largest and the most comprehensive study that we have that came out in 2022, yes, they found that temperament, although motor skills are pretty heritable, temperament was not super heritable. I believe it was less than 10% is heritable when it comes to temperament. So how agreeable they are with other dogs and other humans. They're still big dogs. They're still really powerful dogs. You should still, like, all big dogs need to like have, like, your owners need to have control over them. But the history of a pit bull, I've seen Bowen Dickey does a phenomenal book on this called Pit Bull, where she did this phenomenal book. She dove into the history of it. And in reality, she ends it really perfectly. Whereas, like, these dogs are nothing special. They're not more vicious. They're not all of these things. They're just dogs. And a lot of times we hold them accountable to be like, well, they were bred to do these things, but so many animals are not doing what they were bred to do. A lot of them are just laying around on our couches.
Okay. And do you think that manifests into behavioral issues, or is that a...
Yes, but only from the aspect that the way that we treat them is the way that they're going to act in the world.
Right.
So if you are going to train a dog like it's going to be more aggressive naturally, probably that dog's going to just be a little bit more aggressive naturally. I have some data on this that I can email you after, but there's actually been studies that have found that if you are constantly treating your dog like it's going to be reactive, it's going to become reactive.
Yeah.
And with a lot of like the pit bull, with like a lot of the dog bites, there was a big study that came out, and I'll find it, but they actually found that a very common denominator with these dogs is more often they're intact. So they're not neutered, often male, and often left alone to their own devices and were trained to be reactive. So to like guard property. So that's where a lot of the most fatal pit bull bites or dog bites happen. It's also so increasingly rare to die of pit bull attacks. I think it's 40 Americans annually will die of a dog attack a year. Like, it's
more than
very
sharks.
Yeah. It's
wild.
More than sharks?
I think so. I think sharks, it's like 10 people maybe. I'm going to misquote that. I looked that up. But anyway.
Yeah. It's very, very, the chances of you dying from a dog attack are pretty slim. And when people say it's how they're raised, yes, but I would say, yes, it's how they're raised, but it's also the environment that they're in. And I would say that...
one death per year for sharks. Sorry.
Oh, it's all good. Well, I think, and if you are someone who has a dog that's like labeled aggressive, if you're pulling on the leash every single time that you see, if you're pulling on that leash every single time you see someone coming by, your dog will eventually be like, oh, this is bad. I need to stay away from them. And then will act out.
Yeah. No, that's very true.
Yeah. They're also, I will say the nanny dog is also a myth. That was also something published in defense of pit bulls. That was just a lie in a magazine that just took off.
What's a nanny dog?
People say like, oh, pit bulls were the nanny dogs. Like they took care of kids, and pit bulls are great dogs. And a lot of dogs I've fallen in love with have been pit bulls and staffies, which are, by the way, two different dogs. And the whole like what is a pit bull, what is not a pit bull is a discussion that on the internet just gets a little carried away. But I don't believe in, but they said that, well, these dogs were actually bred and brought into the house to take care of children. And that's not true. There's no such thing as a dog that can take care of children.
Right. Okay. I have heard that. I just didn't know it was called nanny dogs. Okay. Yeah. With that, we'll take a quick commercial break and we'll be right back. Okay, and we're back with episode 43 of Ethnocynology with Alexandra the Average. And yeah, so is there any other, soapbox or anything that you'd like to, impart onto an audience that we haven't covered yet? And we can go from there. Because I know you have a lot of takes, and I've enjoyed most of them that I've seen.
Can I ask which one you have? I would say, are there ones you haven't enjoyed? Because I'd love to. I'm not trying to
phrase that weird. I haven't watched all of your takes, is what I meant to say. But the ones that I've seen,
probably good for your mental health.
Yeah. But you do have a very good way of just, I wish I could be as like direct and like concise to the camera as you are, which is why it's enjoyable content.
I pre-write all of my scripts, which is why you'll sometimes see me like my eyes will not look so like intently like I'm conversing. I pre-write all of my scripts, which is I work from home most of the time when I'm not traveling. So or even when I am traveling, so having downtime somewhere, I could just write them out in great detail. And I try to follow the same formula where I talk about initial study or the initial thing I'm talking about, criticisms or like other references to support or say like this is not a super reliable source, and then wrap it up. One thing that I really try to do is not tell people what to do.
Okay.
And I think that's really hard because it's really easy for content creators to do exactly that. You can build a lot of community since we have more people moving away from things like religion and having like a priest or a pastor tell what to do, it's really easy. This is my personal take. It's really easy to go to a content creator and have them tell you what to do. And which leads to bad and good, I guess. Mostly bad. Yeah.
But there are some that are amazing. Like I say that there are content creators who are extremely informative, who give you like tangible advice or like give you tangible pieces of information you can implement. And I try to talk more about research more than I talk about anything else, research or history or legislation. And I never tell people what to do. The only time I ever really do is like talk to your vet about something. If there's a piece of legislation that you are really excited about, or you disagree with, the best thing you could do is contact your elected representatives. I think it's really hard because I try to be really fair. And I think I would have like a bigger audience if I was like, this is bad and these are awful and you should go do this. But I try to just say, I want you to leave my videos a little bit more informed about something than you were previously.
Yeah. No, you do a great job at that. That's kind of how I'd come away from them. In the dog space, it's like training and in dog nutrition and dog cognition, it is very hard for me to find a dog training page that isn't like, this is how it should be. These people are wrong. And then you find out they all hate each other and they'll message me and be like, hey, I see you follow this person. I'm like, well, why does that matter? Like, I just want to see their opinion.
Yeah. No, that's very true.
It's very toxic.
I would say that someone who's really good at dog training in a way that's not like super alpha male and is not someone too. There is so much of that. Well, I think that also plays more into like what type of dogs you get and identity. So her name is Abby and Dogs. She's a dog trainer and she's really good at like giving pieces of information without making you feel angry or upset. I think in the dog training space, there are a lot of phenomenal dog trainers who get overshadowed by really emotionally driven dog trainers. Well, that's just the internet. That's just the internet though.
You have to be divisive, not even divisive, but you have to, pander to emotions like when you're doing stuff to make content engaging sometimes too, and that makes it difficult.
I mean, I had a video on my drafts on TikTok last week where I talked about dogsbite.org and how that data is collected and how it is extremely flawed and actually just like it's referenced often as like a piece of legitimate information, but it's actually a woman's blog and she's using Google Alerts to update a spreadsheet and then make graphs that seem credible that actually aren't. And when I did that, it was significantly snarkier than my normal tone. And it has been one of my most engaged videos on both Instagram and TikTok in months.
Wow. Okay.
Emotion does wonders for your algorithm, but it's not.
What was that topic?
Dogsbite.org. Okay.
Yeah.
Speaking of pitbulls, I also made an exact parody website called Men's Bites where
I did see this one.
So Colleen Lynn was a woman who was bit by a dog. She fell and she was bit by a dog. And then as a web designer, made a whole website about failed dog bites, or the dogs who are most likely to bite. And what her system is, she actually has a Google alert set up. And when there's a new dog bite, she will try to visually identify the breed, will mark it into her personal spreadsheet that is not held to any form of accountability. It's just hers. And they'll make these graphs and then will be referenced in legal blogs or legal blogs or like lawyers who are really please be our client so we can like for litigation purposes, or will be used even in policy where there will be people who will go there like, according to this source, they're the most like dangerous dog breeds. But in reality, it's visual identification is super
Like, we're terrible at it. There's a study out of Florida that tried with both staff of shelters and veterinary professionals. And they actually found that I think over 70% of the time, they were not able to identify the main identification of a dog of some form of mutt in comparison to the DNA samples. And she will pull all this information, and she'll take this information after she identified the blog, she'll upload it into her spreadsheet, make these graphs, and then she'll consider them credible, but it's her personal blog. So all these references that these legal blogs that try to make her sound more valid or see her as a credible source, she will point to as like, look at me as a piece of authority, I'm correct, and also look what these people say, which I like to refer to as a circle jerk of misinformation. And she will actually talk about her previous posts, her previous referencing as a point of validity or a point of authority. But in academia, if you were to do that, it would never pass. And I said in my videos, like, you can't quote a paper that you wrote as a source of information. So dogsbite.org was essentially one of the biggest pieces of this misinformation. Bowen Dickey actually did a whole section on her in the book that I referenced earlier. And I couldn't find it anywhere else besides her book. I've been looking for the source and I can't find it. I'm not saying it's not true. I'm just saying that I cannot find the source where she actually said this, but she referred to the CDC and the American Veterinary Association as a bunch of science whores.
Science whores. Yeah.
Which, same.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Both not good.
No.
Okay. Yeah. That's really, yeah. I had a friend who got in trouble for plagiarizing his own work because he cited his own paper. This was just at grad school, but yeah, they do take that very seriously. But
imagine if that led policy change.
Right. Doesn't work well.
No.
Yeah. See my previous statement on this is not the greatest citation, and he was doing it in inadvertently. He was just like, oh, I wrote this here. I don't want to plagiarize myself kind of thing. But yeah, it was an interesting thing. Okay. Yeah. We're going to talk about something fun and lighthearted. Colonization.
Yeah. Colonization has, like, we in the United States, and it's really funny is that I've talked about this and people are like, well, what about Chihuahuas? I'm like, those are not American, but majority of American dogs, or what we view as American dogs, are actually not American dogs. They were brought over by England or by other countries. So you'll see. So that's why we have so many English, German dogs. My boyfriend really wants a German short hair pointer, which I'm not someone who's ever going to be like, let's get a purebred dog.
Right.
But the last thing I want is an extremely high energy dog in my life as a active, but also at the same time lazy person. So a lot of we have essentially taken away a lot from Native Americans, as we know. Even recently, I was reading about the Sioux tribe and actually how one of the biggest ways to actually control them happens to be wiping out the buffalo population. And that also applied to the Salish woolly dog, which were a big resource for that community. It was a Salish or Salish. I got roasted in the comments for it when I did
I have too when I talked about it, so I don't talk about it often, but I think it's Salish.
Okay. Yeah. The woolly dog. And we only have one pellet left of them, but they did kind of wipe them out. And they actually, and there were historians who were saying like, oh, well, it could have just been the disease. The people were breeding them less, but according to a lot of the natives, a lot of them were wiped out. And dogs are just part of American and human history. So dogs are also sometimes a weapon of war. So they can either be an oppressor or they could be wiped out as a whole population.
Yeah. One of the chapters that I'm writing the book on is about this specifically, and like dogs in the age of exploration. And when in Columbus's journal, when he forgot to, I guess it's Hispaniola now, or it's the Dominican Republic now, when he got there, obviously he mentioned he mentioned that they'd make good servants was like one of the first things he says. And then a lot of his logs were made to be purposely misleading in case the Portuguese found it, which I find also interesting. So obviously got to take it with a grain of salt on top of it being Columbus's words. But he mainly wrote about their dogs being quiet. They didn't bark and things like that. So in the first point of contact between the New World and the Old World that wasn't the Vikings, was dogs are mentioned. And then I talk about Captain Cook a lot too, who in his first two voyages was pretty anthropological. Third voyage was when he became cook and didn't have a great time. And people didn't have a great time with him, put it that way. He wrote about dogs, right? He wrote about dogs too. And Magellan as well tried to hold mass in the Philippines. And that's like why they killed him. And he was just like, we're having mass right now. And they're like, we don't want that. So there's
so funny
too.
Because Filipinos are like, the Philippines is such a Catholic nation.
I guess now, yeah.
Yeah.
After the Spanish got there.
So funny because I'm Irish and Filipino and I'm not Catholic. And so when people say like, well, your type of like everything is genetics, I'm like, not everything. And that applies to the dog world. Sorry, please continue.
No, totally. That's funny. But with that though, there's a lot of, specifically with the Salish dogs, I have found record of like there being laws where they can't breed them, they can't use them. But I do see a lot of times, and I want to agree with it, but it's hard to find citations that the Spanish specifically said kill all the dogs in Mexico. Like that didn't necessarily. I can't find a lot of that. Sometimes there are some, but with that, it's also just as you said. There's waves and waves of humans coming over. They're bringing dogs with them, and those dogs are interbreeding with native populations. Native American dog populations, and that's how those dogs got replaced too.
Yeah.
And which, even if the Spanish were on the book saying like, no breeding Chihuahuas, no breeding, it's Techichis, I think. And then the Xolos, it's still, a sad part of colonization that those breeds are gone because so many colonizing dogs came over, I guess would be the word, or dogs brought with colonists. Yeah, it's just sad.
It is pretty sad. And that's where I think the conversation, I think my least favorite thing to talk about online, even though I do think it's worthy of conversation frequently, is dog breeding legislation. And a comment that I get is like, well, these hobbyist breeders are really important for conservation, preservation of these breeds. And it'll be something like a German Shepherd in comparison to something like actual dogs that are at risk of going extinct. And there have been dogs that have gone extinct, but dogs are just part of like human history. So they are going to get wrapped up into the colonization story, and the same of native tribes. We did not let a lot of them live. And there were ones that were forced into environments where they reproduced without consent by colonizers, to not say anything that's going to get flagged by YouTube or Spotify.
Right.
But yeah, so I do believe there was, correct me if I'm wrong, there was something that happened in Mexico where they did realize that Chihuahuas were a source, like a symbol of, I don't want to say like almost a religious symbol, but some of them were like, they held the amount of emotional weight for the Mexican population in that area. So there was a point where they did try to kill them all off. There was the Spanish colonization, right?
Yeah, there's several instances. I can't remember them off the top of my head and what they specifically were, but there were some that I found that I've been trying to cite where they specifically prescribed like you can't do that, and it had something to do with the Zapatista revolution too. Like that was part of it. But yes, specifically with those two dogs, it was like you weren't allowed to breed them. But as an overall like edict from the king of like kill all the Native American dogs, I don't think that happened. But there is instances of it. I don't want to misquote and say which one it was, but yeah, there are some.
Yeah. And for the woolly dog, that specifically was also because these dogs offered resources for these people. So as in like, we could shear them like we do sheep with wool, where they actually provided warmth and comfort and resources. So when that dog population no longer exists, that's a whole native population that just lost one of their biggest resources.
Right. And art from the textiles, which is cultural expression, which gets suppressed. Right.
Yes. We've never suppressed art a day in our lives as in North America. I don't know what you're talking about.
Exactly. Yeah. And I guess I know we wanted to do identity too, but I love with colonization first so we can end on a more happy note. But yeah, is there anything else on colonization? I went off on a tangent myself. I'm trying to think if there's anything else.
No, but I would say that arguably you're the more expert in this than I am. I think that colonization is a very interesting topic. And I think that the lack of, I think that would be a good PhD.
It honestly would be. It'd be very depressing research every day to do, but there's probably a wealth of info out there.
I mean, truly, any form of history is kind of depressing if you go further back enough. It's a lot of times the more that I dive into it, the more I'm like, man, we got to get rid of the whole thing. I can't do anything anymore. It's like, there's no point in continuing. Like I'm going through a very serious Native American war history phase, which makes me very fun at parties, specifically with Sitting Bull. And I find that the more I learn things, the more I'm like, I want to tell you this really depressing thing that I learned. And then normal people don't want to have those conversations.
Yeah. Yeah, it's I work with a lot of Native Americans too, and it's like those conversations it's fun to have because it's like, you know, hearing their opinion of it, but at the same time, it's just like, let's talk about, you know, how you were, you know, it's like hard to have those combos, but it's important stuff to learn about too, and especially their perspective as well, which I found very fascinating. But yeah, it's a very depressing topic. What's the Sitting Bull thing?
Oh, Sitting Bull, the tribe leader who was also chief. Yeah. It's just the more I learn about him, the more I'm like, he was in his own way a symbol. In the same way that these dogs are a symbol, that he was a symbol of resistance for these people. And them losing him to Native Americans who were like basically hired by the US government was a bigger loss than just one individual. That was like losing a rebellion, or pushback or a revolutionary leader in a space.
Like a symbol of it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And you could see the impact of how things went because not too long after that, Wounded Knee happened.
Right.
Also very fun topic.
I was going to say, also very fun to talk about.
Yeah.
Let's, in the last few minutes here, let's shift to, and you wanted to bring up identity and dogs and stuff like that. And that's something I would love to dive into on another episode if we can at some point, if you'd love to come back.
But I would love to come back and talk about identity with dogs because I have a whole bunch of research on that I could actually name off the top of my head. So I will become...
Okay.
Yeah. If you want to do a two-parter, I am more than happy to do an episode on breed and identity and consumer psychology because it's a very
okay. Well, yeah,
topic.
Let's get you back on for that another time. But if there's any like quick tidbit you could leave us with, you know, to tease the next one on that, because I know there's probably tons you could say. But I'll let you just soapbox at the end here.
So I'm just gonna do anecdotal, if that's okay.
Yeah.
So I have found that when people online talking about breeding legislation or when people encourage going to rescues, you will have people who have acquired purebred dogs who a lot of our identity is built up in these purebred dogs. There's a study that was called, there's this paper that's called The Extended Self that came out in 1988 that actually talked about how things that you acquire become part of you or like you identify with them. And so what you will actually see if you criticize any form of dog breeding, like if I were to criticize German Shepherd breeding, people who love German Shepherds are going to feel personally insulted because it is part of the extended self.
Yeah. Guilty of that myself.
Yeah. And that's rooted in a lot of things. And people are more likely to pick certain dogs based off of what they want to present in the world. Like it's the same way as like if you were to choose a leveled F-150 or a Prius, it is part of what you're expressing to the world.
Huh.
But we'll dive into that.
Yeah, because dogs are tech like that too. Yeah, no, that's a great way to end that. Dogs as a technology in that sense too is something I talk about a lot. And I will get, when I say that, I mean it in a, like, look how cool they are. Dogs are a stone tool you can shape into any tool you need them for. But then a lot of people will be like, my dog's not a tool, it's not an object. And that I think they're not getting the full. So it's been fun for me to try to find ways to broach that subject in a more sensitive way. But it's just, but with that,
that's the same with children. I mean, for the longest time, people had children so they could go and work in fields or they could go and like work on a farm. You're like, for you, maybe your dog is not a tool, but for some people who like have, I don't know, sheep that they need to herd, a border collie makes sense.
Yeah, no, very true. And watching a border collie do its thing is like mesmerizing. It's like watching a robot do something.
In that episode, I want to talk about the difference between temperament and motor skills and the data that we have on that.
Absolutely. Let's do it. Alexandra, thank you so much for coming on. This has been awesome. And I could talk to you I wish I had 3 hours to talk to you right now, but I don't. What's your podcast?
My podcast, which has not been released, is coming out soon. It's called Pod Reviewed Research and is done with my friends, Dr. Kent, who is a vet out of Michigan, and my friend Beth, who is a brilliant vet tech who will not let you know how brilliant she is when you first meet her, but because she is, and she will very much downplay it. We like to phrase that all of us are kind of like, with us accepting compliments for like crinkly dollars that are constantly spitting them out when you try to put it in. You're like not that. But we talk about the animal-human connection. We talk about animal welfare. We talk about legislation. We talk about how all these different parts of history, all these different parts of culture affect the type of dog, what happens to your dog when you bring it into the clinic and how that plays into what happens with a dog on your couch in your home. Episodes are sometimes very long and a little depressing, but very detailed and reference heavy.
Cool. Well, I'm excited to listen to those. I'll put those, when that's ready, shoot it to my Instagram and I'll make sure to share it.
Perfect.
And then, your Instagram is Alexandra the Average.
Alexandra the Average.
Cool. Not to be confused with Alexandra the Great, but that's fine. It's, I guess, similar. Well, yeah, Alexandra, thank you so much for coming on. Happy to have you back on anytime. And yeah, thanks again.
I would love to. Thank you so much.
Of course.
Thanks for listening to this podcast. The Archaeology Podcast Network's chief editor is Rachel Roden. Our executive producer is Ashley Airy. Our social media and newsletter coordinator is Matilda Siebrecht. The APN was founded by Chris Webster and Tristan Boyle on December 1st, 2014. We're supported by our amazing podcast hosts, many volunteers, and listeners like you. Check out membership at www.archpodnet.com/members.
This has been a presentation of the Archaeology Podcast Network. Visit us on the web for show notes and other podcasts at www.archpodnet.com. Contact us at chris@archaeologypodcastnetwork.com.